Dear friends, if everybody could take their chair, we can start. Marietje Schaake will be the moderator, so I only make some remarks. But I was asked to say that those who want to listen to this debate in Russian is channel 25. Channel 25, and then you have a translation into Russian. First of all, I think it's an honor to participate in the event which is the result of our group leaders' initiative, Guy Verhofstadt's initiative, to make a blueprint about how we should have our relations with Russia. I won't go into the details because Mr. Verhofstadt will do that himself, but in the end it means, at least also for me as coordinator of the foreign affairs team of the Liberals of ALDE, that we have our position on legality, on the borders, internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. That doesn't stop. But we need to engage with Russia, to talk and to see whether there is an option that we continue to have a normalized relationship given the difference of opinions. Because if we don't talk, not much will change, and we want change. It's a pleasure to see also that so many people are here who have their roots in either Russian society, more pro-government or more pro-opposition. And there is a vivid debate on democracy in Russia, as we know, which we follow with great interest, as those who have a view which is, let me say, in the same line as Ukraine and also partners there. You know, ALDE has partners both in Russia and Ukraine and in other countries. Again, let this be a step forward without losing our ideas, but coming more together. Marietje, as moderator, I give you back the floor.
Thank you very much, Hans, and welcome to everybody to this ALDE seminar on perspectives for EU-Russia relations. I think it is no secret how difficult this relation is, and how, as liberals, we believe that the pillars of a fruitful relationship or partnership should always rest on respect for the rule of law, respect for fundamental rights and freedoms of people. And that is no different for Russia. Of course, our heart goes out to the people in Russia, and we would like to make it very clear that government-to-government relations are not the same as the way in which we see the Russian people, and we value very much the contexts that are there and hope that those contexts can remain. But of course, on the political level and international relations level, there are serious challenges between the EU and the Russian government. Think about Russian roles in Syria and the death of innocent people, but of course also the illegal annexation of Crimea and the ongoing war in eastern Ukraine. And in these very, very challenging times, we as a group see it as our obligation to keep looking for solutions. And in that light, we've had in-depth discussions, also reflecting the different opinions of members of our group in seeking answers to the question, what should the relation between the EU and Russia look like, and how do we go forward? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to listen to the leader of the ALDE Group, Guy Verhofstadt, who will outline the so-called paper or blueprint that has been the result of these ongoing discussions in our political group, the consultation of experts and a proposal for the way forward. And then we will have the honor of welcoming a wonderful panel of experts with very different views. We will start with comments from Alexey Navalny, who needs no introduction, and we're very happy that he can join us via Skype today. And then hopefully Ambassador Ischinger will have arrived. He will also share his comments. He's the chairman of the Munich Security Conference. And then we'll hear from Dmitry Androsov, who is a member of the Federal Political Council of Parnas, the Party of National Freedom. And lastly, we'll hear from Andrey Kortunov, Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. I think this will be enough food for thought, and hopefully it will give you a good sense of how we are taking our responsibility in trying to pave the way, indeed, as Hans mentioned, without losing sight of the non-negotiable essentials that the Liberal Group cares about, the rule of law, people's universal rights, and democratic and other freedoms. So, Guy, the word to you.
Thank you. First of all, welcome to everybody and welcome also to the MEPs, not only from our group but also from other groups who are presented here today. And the purpose of my intervention is to present you this new blueprint for a new, renewed EU strategy towards Russia. And it's not by accident that we organize it today. This event takes place following the third anniversary of the murder of somebody who was a very close friend of this group, of Boris Nemtsov, a politician who have always worked for modernizing Russia into a democratic, prosperous country anchored in European values. And in a certain way, I can tell you, this blueprint is also a way to pay tribute to the legacy of Boris Nemtsov. First of all, let me say that in our relations with Russia, for once the European Union has proven quite some unity. The sanctions that were adopted during the crisis in Ukraine were a signal that the 28 member states of the Union don't look away if Russia use military force against a neighboring country or is violating the internationally recognized borders. But there, it seems, the EU joint policy ends. That's the reality of today. Relations between the EU and Russia for the moment are frozen. Summits do not take place. Work on new cooperation arrangement are not progressing at all. And moreover, the implementation of the Minsk agreement also has stopped. And at the same time, what is happening is that EU member states continue engaging in bilateral relations with Moscow, and this with a different degree of intensity. So we as a group, as a liberal and democratic group, think that it is not enough to simply contain a war and to turn it into what it really is today, a new frozen conflict. We think that a proactive strategy is needed to get the relationship out of the current stalemate and to motivate Russia to start also behaving as what we think to be a more responsible player. The European Union, indeed, let's first of all remember that, is indeed Russia's closest trading partner, and this despite the sanction regime. And the EU has therefore, I think, a particular interest, and I think also a responsibility, to motivate and engage Russia to play in another way and along the rules, because, let's be frank, there is a core problem today. Look to the intervention in Ukraine, annexation of Crimea, and Russian military personnel and equipment fueling clashes between separatist and Ukraine armed forces. Look at what is happening in Syria, where Russian military and political cover enabled Assad to raise Aleppo to the ground, and today the same is happening again in East Ghouta. Look to other systematic violations of international rules, even in the sports world. Look also at the situation inside Russia, where universal human rights are violated and journalists, civil society and democratic opposition have a very difficult life, and we can put doubts, real doubts, that there are free and fair elections. So this compliance with international law and rules is particularly important, giving also Russia important role as permanent member of the UN Security Council, where the international standards are set, and also given its responsibility as a world nuclear power. And it is why we believe that the European Union needs more than only, we have unity about sanctions, that we need a new strategy, and we call that new strategy a strategy of conditional engagement. Conditional engagement That means rolling out a diplomatic effort, more or less inspired, if I can compare it, by the Helsinki process launched in the 70s. And this new strategy would contain, in fact, several processes, where progress in one of these processes can then open up cooperation in the other processes, so that the overall relationship between the European Union and Russia is put into a far wider perspective than the perspective of today. The process of conditional engagement that we propose to you should be underpinned by three different pillars. First of all, progress then in the political pillar, a security pillar, and an economic pillar. And the idea is that progress in the political and the security pillar would mean that we can open up also cooperation, more cooperation in the economic pillar. And this means that the full potential of relations between the European Union and Russia can be unlocked and investments open up if Russia naturally delivers on respect to international law, respect to the OSCE obligations, and also contributes to solving frozen conflicts in the east of Europe. And further openings could then take place if that is happening, potentially even towards what I call a free trade area reaching from Lisbon to Vladivostok, provided that the investment environment in Russia improves, that Russia delivers on its commitments as member of the Council of Europe and also as a signatory of different European conventions, and provided also that it returns to full democratic standards, including also free and fair elections. In order to make this process work, what we need to do as European Union, that is that to make full use of all the tools that we have in our toolbox. That means diplomatic, trade, economic assistance, financial cooperation, confidence-building measures, also readiness to deploy civilian and military missions, and this besides the use of sanctions. Because let's be frank, in this process, we must be ready and able to use our instruments both ways, engage and reward cooperative developments, but also be ready to scale up, if it is necessary, I think, economically and personally target sanctions if that is needed. And that is in particular true in a number of cases, because it's unacceptable that people who today violate, in fact, Russian and international law have no problem to bring their family or their money into the safety of the European Union and into the safety of our rule of law. As you know, it was our group and a number of members of this group who initiated the adoption of the so-called Magnitsky resolution calling for a visa ban on people responsible for the murder of Sergei Magnitsky. And we all know that, to the difference of the US and Canada, the Council, the European Council, failed to impose this ban, but followed the same logic when it came to preventing people responsible for violations of Ukrainian territorial integrity from travelling to the European Union. And as no third country national has a given right to get a Schengen visa, we advocate wider use of this tool to discourage irresponsible behaviour. Also, as is the case these days in the US, our law enforcement inside the European Union must hold accountable those who undermine our democratic institutions, including elections, and also disinformation, because we all know communication has become an important tool in achieving geopolitical goals. We must make sure that we strengthen the media literacy and resilience of our societies, and also we must have a debate, I think, on how to regulate it, these media, and make them naturally within the limits of freedom of speech accountable for what they share, and along the obligations binding publishers. Of course, dealing with social media, strengthening our cybersecurity capabilities is not the only area where the EU has homework to do. as it develops its engagement with Russia. We also must upgrade other things, defense union, energy union, and so on. But what is also important and makes part of this new strategy that we propose today is that in parallel to diplomatic efforts, to this what I call new conditional engagement with the leadership of the Russian Federation, because that's the proposal in this blueprint, it's absolutely also necessary to upgrade our direct engagement with the Russian civil society. And this independent, I think, from the progress we are making, yes or not, within the other three pillars, the political one, the security one, and the economic one. That means something very concrete. That means that we unilaterally must facilitate visas for Russian citizens, that we must open up university, research places in Europe, that we must increase the number of scholarships, and also directly supporting civil society organizations. And this also means finding ways to support plurality of the Russian-speaking media space. But I think that I'm now already talking about the second panel, who will be moderated by our friend and member Javier Nart. So thank you for your attention. Thank you certainly for your presence. And we are very keen as a group to hear now the comments of our distinguished guests, and that we can start this important discussion.
Thank you very much, Guy. I think your outline underlines once more the extraordinary challenges, but also the fact that we're not shying away to put on the table concrete measures to address them with clear conditionalities. I would also like to welcome Ambassador Ischinger to the European Parliament. Glad to have you here as well, joining our panel. With your permission, we will go to Alexey Navalny first because he has limited time. He's on Skype, and then we'll come back to the rest of the panel. So if it could be technically facilitated to bring in Mr. Navalny for his initial responses to the blueprints. And welcome, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining our ALDE seminar. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here. And thanks for the opportunity to provide my view on what's going on with the EU-Russia relations. Looking at the blueprints and hearing what you say, I can only agree with what it stated. This is very solid and relevant document. And if I may, I want to focus on what's called the political pillar, since you put the issue of European Court there, which is quite important from my point of view. It is a crucial moment to understand that misusing of judicial system became a main tool of converting Russia in authoritarian country. Our judges became a sort of Putin's soldier, and which is the most important, they consider themselves as the Putin's soldier, ready to execute any order and bring any ridiculous ruling. But in a formal way, at the very top of Russian judicial system is the European Court for Human Rights. And it's a quite long procedure, but at the end we can get fair trial. What we really fail to get is an implementation. It is not difficult for me to find some nice examples. I was banned from participation in current election despite the ruling of the European Court in my favor. Despite the fact that Committee of Ministers declared that the Russian Federation failed to implement this ruling, and Russian Federation must implement it. My brother is sitting in jail despite the ruling of European Court claiming that his verdict must be cancelled. Actually, at this very moment, my chief of campaign right now is sitting in jail, and the director of our NGO, Anti-Corruption Foundation, is sitting in jail as well. And actually, so far, we have won every single case we filed in the European Court concerning arrests of activists, but still nothing happened and the situation is getting worse. During my campaign, during this current presidential campaign, before I was banned, I had this campaign within a year, and I spent 2 months from this year in jail, and actually I'm waiting for more jail time. I have another trial on the March 5th, and I don't think it will be very different compared to other trials. During this campaign, all our volunteers and employees, they together got more than 2,500 days of arrests. So I do believe that political pillar of these blueprints concerning implementation of the decision of European Court should be reinforced. The sanctions and visa bans should be spread on people responsible for non-implementation. And I really want to encourage the discussion among European politicians about non-recognition of the results of current presidential election, or better say, reappointment of Mr. Putin. In situation when one of the candidates was illegally banned from participation despite the ruling of European Court. I totally understand that it would be not an easy discussion, but it has to be started now, because it's quite clear picture of what we now have in Russia. We are moving to lifetime presidency of Mr. Putin. Our country is converting to monarchy step by step, and Russian Tsar is eager to have absolute power again. We have tens of millions of Russians who are ready to oppose and confront this restoration of monarchy. Yes, we have them, but their voice cannot be heard because their candidates are banned from the elections. Their political parties are banned from elections. And the strategy of Kremlin is banning everything what is independent and pick up some Muppets and to compete with them and beat them easily with this famous 70% of support. So that is not a real election, right? And a lot of people in Russia will be very happy and very glad if European Union, through its politician, will declare this very simple and very obvious statement. These are not elections, and their results cannot be recognized. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and I know you don't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to ask you, besides the very clear point of independence of the judiciary, the rule of law, and the question of the validity or legitimacy of the elections in the current circumstances, which of course you have personally faced the lack of freedoms for. Whether you could speak a bit to the point that Guy Verhofstadt also made, the importance of engaging the Russian people. Could you sketch the situation that you believe the population is in, their economic situation, other challenges they may face in the current Russia, and what the EU might do, also to clearly indicate that it is no one's intention to, through the sanctions that unfortunately had to be adopted after violation of international law, to punish the population. It's not anyone's intention in Europe, but rather it's felt like no choice in the political circumstances. So any thoughts on what the population might need and what we could offer them in the current situation?
Well, thank you very much for this question. I think it's a quite wrong idea to think that the all Russian population is against the sanction. In Russians, they are pretty clear understand that there are two types of sanctions. Sanction against our economy, and of course, as a Russian politician, I cannot support this part of sanctions, and everyone understands that's damaging our level of life. But the part of sanctions which concern particular individuals, they are a lot of Russians actually support this part of sanction because it concerns people who we consider as thieves and corrupt officials. And everyone here in Russia is really eager to see some implementation of this sanction because, to be honest, we so far we never saw an example when assets were really frozen, when a lot of Russian corrupt officials had visa bans. They're still traveling all over the Europe. They are still have much more opportunities to travel in European Union more than just ordinary Russian citizen. I was in Strasbourg a couple of months ago because I have my trial, my hearing in the European Court. And, you know, in every single restaurant in Strasbourg, I can find a Russian official who is sitting there and enjoying some oysters and trying to invent a new idea what he's tell to Russian people when he come back about how bad is European Union, what kind of dangerous countries European Union, and how we should oppose with the European Union because it's kind of countries of perverts, etc., etc. When we're talking about sanctions and we're trying to find some support among Russian people for the sanctions, please reinforce visa bans against Russian officials, corrupt officials, not of course all of them. Please, we need some real showcase against corrupt Russian officials who are, we have a lot of, against whom we have a lot of proofs about their involvement in corruption. If we will find such showcases, these type of sanctions will be supported greatly in Russia, and millions of Russians can see how actually friendly European Union was them.
Thank you for your answer. I have one last question. We know that media and the internet are not free in Russia, so that information may not always reach the ears of ordinary Russians. And similarly, there's a hot debate in Europe about efforts to influence Europeans, to undermine the European Union, our liberal democracy. What are your thoughts on information flows between Russia and Europe, and any points for improvement towards more pluralist and free debate?
I think the first measure that must be taken is to not allow to Mr. Putin, his regime, to use the current mechanism and current companies against the democracy and against the freedom of speech. For example, our last investigation about the Russian oligarchs and top-ranked Russian officials who spent their time on the yacht in the Norwegian, actually, waters with some escort girls. This investigation and the article about this investigation, our movie about this investigation was banned in Russia by the Russian censorship regulation body. But this Russian censorship regulation body, Roskomnadzor, also addressed Instagram, which belongs to Facebook, which is a Western company, and demand to delete some information. And unfortunately, this company, under the American and European regulation, which actually is not dependent from Russian government, they agreed and they deleted a lot of information inside of Instagram. So we can see that, unfortunately, attempts from the Russian officials to use the mechanism of democracy and mechanism of regulation inside of United States and inside of the European Union can work against the freedom of speech in Russia. So I think that the very first idea to not allow Russian officials to use a European mechanism to provide censorship inside of Russia. Does it make any sense?
Thank you very much. It makes a lot of sense, and in fact, our group is very actively addressing the question of, the takedown of information, the responsibility of major international companies, and of course, and I hope you heard that also in the introductory remarks of our political group's president, Guy Verhofstadt. For us, freedom of expression, universal human rights are non-negotiable, and he also very clearly stressed the matter of elections, and we have long-standing links with people in the Russian opposition, and for us the fate and the freedoms of the population in Russia is always at the heart of our attention. So I hope it will help. We've seen the takedown by Instagram, owned by Facebook, of your post, and have challenged it. But of course, it's not only those companies that are limiting your liberties, and so I hope that you will be able to continue to do your opposition work. And thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to address us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that brings us to Ambassador Ischinger, who at the Munich Security Conference has always sought to have a dialogue between people of different understandings of the world, including leaders from Russia. I heard Sergei Lavrov at the most recent edition of the Munich Security Conference. I know you've thought a lot about EU-Russia relations, and we're very happy that you're willing to share your feedback to the blueprint that Guy Verhofstadt has just presented.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. I regard this as a particular privilege to participate in this discussion, and I think the paper which has been prepared provides an excellent basis. I know I have only a few minutes. I would want to share with you very briefly, or in telegram style, 10 points. And I can do that in the course of just a few minutes. But let me preface these remarks by a more philosophical point. Where do I come from? I have had the privilege in my diplomatic career ever since the mid-1970s to be involved in the question of how to deal with the Soviet Union, and more recently, of course, how to deal with Russia. And quite frankly, the best philosophic underpinning of the approach which I found reasonable in the 1970s or 80s is still a good guideline, and it happens to have been prepared not for the EU at the time, but for NATO, and it carries the name of a Belgian politician, namely Pierre Armel. And the idea, for those of you who are younger than I and don't remember the Armel report, the idea can be summed up very simply, maybe too simply, by proposing as much defense of our values, of our borders, as necessary, and as much offer of dialogue and cooperation and integration, if you wish, as possible. That was the fundamental idea, and I think that is still not a bad initial point of departure for our policy approaches. So my first point is, if that's the starting point, why is it so difficult at the moment? Well, one issue in diplomacy is always the question of trust. And I simply want to highlight or underline that we are living through a period where trust, not only between us here in the EU and the Russians, has essentially evaporated, but trust has, and that may be strategically even more important, has evaporated, has gone down to practically zero between major elements of the Russian elite, including the military, and the American side. And that, of course, is a huge obstacle. As they say, it always takes two to tango, and that is why we have these enormous difficulties. My second point, and I'm just sort of going through the paper in front of us, my second point is simply to say that, yes, of course, we need a more credible, a more meaningful, a more capable defense union. And I applaud the efforts that have been made here in Brussels, including by the Commission and of course, by the European Parliament and others to take us forward in the direction of having a capacity to act that is more meaningful in the future than it has been in the past. I also fully agree, and I speak as a German here, I fully agree that if we are interested in having a credible common foreign and security policy, you can't possibly exclude energy from that, which is why I think it's a good point to include energy. And if that's true, then even those among us who believe that, Nord Stream has some good arguments in favor of it, need to accept that we need to come to one conclusion about these types of issues. If we can't have one energy security policy for the EU, our EU foreign policy will always, will always be vulnerable and will tend to break apart as soon as somebody pushes back a little bit. My fourth point is, and I would propose that point maybe should be added to this list, is about CFSP, about foreign policy. The best military capability is worthless if we don't have a strategic consensus of what it is that the European Union wishes to pursue in terms of its foreign policy goals. And as long as we suffer the pains of consensus politics or unanimity in foreign policy, no one will believe from the outside world, including in particular in Russia, that we mean business. So I think that taking things forward in the direction of, and I'm quite courageous here, I think the word that should be on the table here is qualified majority voting. And I believe that my own government, once we have one in Berlin, hopefully in a few weeks, my own government would actually do itself a favor if it came out and said voluntarily, we, the Germans, we are ready to declare that we will never use the veto if there is a 27-1 situation where we would then normally be likely to cast a veto. We will not use it. And we invite all the other members to do the same. I think that would be a meaningful first step in a direction which I regard as urgent. Fifth point, I applaud the paragraphs or the paragraph in the paper on society, including on visa liberalization. I happen to believe that this may sound counterintuitive, that in a situation of major tension between the West and Russia, one would want to open the doors and offer visa-free travel. I think offering visa-free travel to the average Russian, just as we offered visa-free travel to the average Ukrainian, would be an extremely powerful signal that it is not the Russian people that we have a problem with, but that we have a problem with certain policies adopted by the Russian government. So I would fully support this. Sixth, on the economic point, the economic pillar, of course I agree with the idea of Lisbon to Vladivostok. But let me offer a word of caution here. Let's not forget that there were times when we spoke of Vancouver to Vladivostok. And it's always been a good idea in the economic sphere, but also in the military and security policy area, to make sure that our approaches to the former Soviet Union and to Russia are aligned with our American ally. Now, many of you will say, given the current policies of the Trump administration, they can't even do a trade deal with anyone, so why would it make sense to include them in these ideas? I would still think that taking the Americans, if we can, inside the tent, rather than leaving them outside of our thoughts about trade, is a good idea. Seventh point on security, the security pillar. And this, I'll be done in just 1 minute. One cannot overestimate, ladies and gentlemen, the importance of the fact that there is currently nothing, there's zero going on in the area of confidence-building measures, arms control, whether it's conventional or nuclear. This is a barren field at the moment. And I think it is one of the highest priority items for the EU and also for all those of us who happen to be members of NATO to push for a resumption of meaningful discussions which have to start at the military level. There is so little going on currently at the level of the military leaderships between Washington and Moscow, and certainly also between most of the European military establishments and Moscow, that the risks of misunderstandings, of miscalculation, of misinterpretation, of unintended escalation in case of some accident or some encounter are simply too high. Simply too high. This must not be must not be allowed to go on. So I think that ideas such as the creation of a military commission that would bring together senior Russian military people with senior European military leaders without sort of disregarding the role of NATO would actually be a good idea. My last points are these. As we think about our relationship between the European Union and Russia, let's make sure that at every turn of the road, at every step on this agenda, we do not forget that there are countries in between whose interests need to be taken into account. There is a country called Georgia. There is a country called Ukraine. And there are a number of other countries who are neither really on the road to membership in EU or NATO, nor are they interested in remaining under the umbrella of Russia. Their security is at stake. Their economic future is questionable, and we need to make sure that we do not ignore the interests of these countries as we move forward. My very last point is this. I know that we have always said when we deal with, let's say, Ukraine or Georgia or any of the other countries in question, why can't we deal with a sovereign country without asking the Russians for permission? And I agree that is a reasonable position. At the same time, let me remind you that when I was a younger diplomat in the 1990s, and when the question of NATO enlargement came up in the early and mid-90s, of course we postulated the principle of every country having the right to choose its own alliance. But at the very same time, our leaders, Bill Clinton, Helmut Kohl, and others, of course, conducted meaningful, informal discussions with the Russian leadership in order to find out where the pain will become too much for the other side. How far can we go without making you guys on the Russian side feeling too uncomfortable? That does not mean that you accept the sphere of influence, but it means that you conduct intelligent diplomacy, which is why I think informal discussions with everyone who has something to say on the Russian side, whether it's parliamentarians or the Kremlin or the Foreign Ministry or the Academy of Sciences or other institutions, is enormously important, and all of these opportunities should be explored and exploited. Sorry for being so long. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. And I think the applause during the speech to the very clear but not necessarily, shared by everyone points that you made about willingness by member states to give up their vetoes. I mean, I think that's a very important recommendation you make, as well as, of course, the essence of building trust also on the military front with regard to confidence-building measures that are now lacking, the need to address the people versus the government. Thank you for underlining essentially a lot of the key points that we are putting forward in this blueprint, and for being so clear about it. Now I would like to ask Dmitry Androsov to share his thoughts on the blueprint. So to bring in some voices from Russia, we do it right away.
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation and the opportunity to speak in the European Parliament. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for the mentioning of the big event we was thinking about yesterday, the 3rd anniversary of the political assassination of Boris Nemtsov. On the last Sunday, we had already the 4th demonstration, the 4th Boris Nemtsov March in the center of Moscow, which my party, together with other democratic organizations, made also this year. And we will continue to do this because the memory of Boris Nemtsov is something that unites all of us, and it gives a big message to the authorities that everything what they did and they continue to do will never be forget. I would like to tell just one short story. I brought on this Sunday 2 flags on the demonstration, the EU flag, which is quite big, 2 meters, and the Russian one. And the police officer, first of all, they didn't wanted to pass me through the gate, not because they was against the European flag, but because they thought that I'm provocator, and I don't belong to this the sense of this demonstration. But what I want to say, the people, the democratic who thinking democratic and who support the European idea, they of course see the necessity of the integration between Russia and European Union. And this is quite natural for our culture, for our history, for our society, to have the feeling of belongingness to the Europe, to the West, to the European culture, because we are a part of it. And of course, our biggest demand is to initiate the international investigation of the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, because in Russia we have zero trust to the Russian authorities, to the Russian court, and to the judgment, which is actually depends on the will of only one person. I would shortly comment what Mr. Ischinger mentioned about the enlargement of the NATO in the beginning of the 19th and fulfillment of this enlargement in the end of the 19th, because it's very important to understand how the foreign policy of Russia depends not on the foreign environmental, but on the will of the Russian president. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, people in Russia have big expectations that our country will be open for the cooperation with the West, as well as the West will be open for the cooperation with Russia. And the decision for the NATO enlargement 1995 damaged these feelings and broken those expectations. But nevertheless, Russia continues the integration and cooperation with the West. 1997, it was signed a treaty, you know, NATO-Russia treaty. There was erected a council, which works until now, also in these difficult circumstances. But still, in the year 2000, Putin didn't exclude that Russia even could become a member of this organization. What it tells us about? We see the trend. The more undemocratically Russian regime became, the more aggressive and closed the Kremlin became towards the West. And this trend, it continues because of only one reason. The Putin's regime needs to be legitimized. And in democratic societies, like here in Europe, it happens through the free election, through the free media, participation of the citizens through the deputies in parliaments, and so on. Nothing of these tools are working now in Russia. That's why the only one legitimation for the Putin's regime is the confrontation with the West. It continues this beautiful fairy tale that the evil countries of the West will destroy the Russian Federation to let it fall apart and so on. So this is because of to be legitimized and to be seen in the eyes of Russian society, of the Russian citizens, as a strong and legitimized leader. So what have to be done? I written carefully this blueprint, and I would like to say that this is a good paper, a good draft. By the way, I have some questions because I think that some priorities in this paper should be situated in another way. What I'm talking about? I'm talking about the principles of the European Union, which is, in my eyes, in the eyes of my colleagues in the party and other democratic organizations in Russia, should be on the first place. If we are talking about that state authorities and media spread hatred against democracy activists, it's absolutely true. But the question is, why some guys like Vladimir Solovyov, who is one of the famous Russian propagandists on media, has the opportunity to have a huge house in Italy and live here in Europe to enjoy all the preferences of their life in the free European Union. It's not understandable for me. It's not understandable for my colleagues in the party. Alexey Navalny did the investigation on this case. Mr. Solovyov has a house in Italy which is about 10 million euros, and it's a huge residence. And this person, he spread hatred in Russia not only against us, but also against the European Union. And at the same time, this person could rest here and live here and continue to do it. It's not understandable for us. Another case, Magnitsky list. You know, we're very grateful for the passing this this statement 2014 in the European Parliament, this resolution. But until now, it's not passed through the law. It's not passed through the Council of the European Union. And as far as I know, the European Commission has blocked this Magnitsky List 2016. And this is also not understandable for us. The United States did it, Canada did it, while the European Union cannot do it. I think because the European Union have some weaknesses, and Putin knows how to use these weaknesses. And what we expect for the European Union is to be strong and to stand for its own principles. Another case is what Mr. Ischinger also mentioned, the Nord Stream 2. You know, in this draft is written that European Union should to strengthen the energy independence. Probably someone could explain me how the Nord Stream 2 could make the European energy sector more independent from Russia. I'm not a big expert on this case, but I think it's opposite case. So if you really want to help the democratic movement in Russia and people who fight for their rights written in the constitution, you should, first of all, to investigate the international investigation on the assassination of Boris Nemtsov. Then you have to pass through the Magnitsky law to become a real law on the European level, to impose sanctions on the people who are responsible for violating human rights in Russia and who is responsible for killing lawyer Magnitsky, who investigated corruption cases in Russia. And you also have to impose sanctions on other Russian propagandists who, I'm sorry, they are not journalists. They spread hatred and they belong to the train, to the court, in my opinion. The sanctions have also been expanded also on these persons, not only on politicians. But we have seen which result of this hatred could be. Then I could make many examples of people who could be responsible in the corruption in Russia and who has a free visa access and who have houses and bank accounts here. Another investigation of Alexey Navalny is Dmitry Medvedev, who is now Russian Prime Minister, who have also a house in Italy, in Toscana, a big villa, which is 100 hectares big, with forest, with vineyard and other goods. It costs more than his annual salary. I don't think that this money would not be loaned from the Russian budget and from the Russian citizens. Another case is Gennady Timchenko, who lives in Switzerland, as we know, due to the investigation of the killed Boris Nemtsov. He's one of the closest people to Putin, who controls 40% of Russian oil export, and he's not even the citizen of Russian Federation. He gave up his citizenship. He is a citizen of Finland, living in Switzerland. And what we want, that the European Union try to investigate who are the people, what the money are from, and whether this money were not lauded. So because Putin doesn't have a democratic legitimacy, he is not democratically legitimized, everything depends on his personal power. That's why sanctions from the European Union should be, in our opinion, also personal. and directed on the people in Putin's surroundings. Only in this way the regime could feel that it is vulnerable, and that the European Union has as power and strength to fight against these crimes. One of the last points is about the European Union itself. I don't know that Russia is not only one challenge for the United Europe, and Europe, of course, has another problems, also with corruption in some member states, as we know in Romania, Bulgaria, but one of the recent cases, especially Malta. And, of course, European Union has to become strong to respond on this. And it is also in our interest that Europe shows an example. And this is also very important for the Russian opposition, for the Russian democratic society, to have this example. Very important point is to uncover disinformation in the Russian media. And I think one of good example of this fight against this disinformation could be the Baltic states. For example, Lithuania, where such propagandistic channels like Russia Today are not allowed to go through the TV. As far as visas are concerned, I'm absolutely in favor to facilitate the visa regime and practically to abolish the visas between Russia and European Union, because it's, first of all, I don't think that there would be some problems with it, because as we see on the case on Ukraine, as visas were abolished, Ukrainian citizens didn't flow to the European Union, probably because they don't have enough money, but we also don't. But it's very important as a sign that the European Union is open for the Russian society and for the Russian people who stands for democracy. In blueprint is written that there should be some conditions to make this visa abolishment possible. But truly to say, I don't think that Putin is ready to make some such conditions like Georgia and Ukraine. He will not, because it's not in his interest. Everything what the person cares about is to sustain his own personal power and to strengthen this power. Everything should be seen through this point of view. He did not care about Russia. He cares only about his own personal power. And he will not make some conditions to make free visa regime possible. I'm quite skeptical about the economic pillar, because as we have seen, and I already talked about, it's quite tricky where the European Union stands for this, for their principles of human rights, and where it's ready to give up it for economic interest. That's why I'm already also skeptical about the Nord Stream 2, as I already mentioned. And actually, the most important moments in this draft is one of the latest paragraph for me, where it is written that the European Union should use the possibility of imposing visa bans on individuals who grossly violate human rights, like I already mentioned in the case of Magnitsky, and spread hatred, as in the case of Boris Nemtsov, and violating of international law. But it's not should to, it has to do it. Because everything what he's written, it's a good strategy, but I don't see the power in this strategy. It should be something that makes Putin's regime really think about the consequences of their actions. And the consequences here, they are quite weak, in my opinion. And to the end, I would like to say that, of course, there would be no cooperation with Putin because everything he cares is his power, a personal power of his surroundings, of the people who belongs to the sanctions, as I already said. And unless he feels that his regime is not vulnerable and not depends on the strategy of European Union towards him, he will never change his policy. So the only opportunity that he do something in this direction is that you will change your policy. And as very last point, I would like to say, please don't forget the Ukraine, because the Ukraine could be a very good example and a very good reason for the Russian majority to think about how people could change the society, could change the country and to go the European path, European way. That's why Putin does everything that Ukraine will not be a successful country, and that's why the European Union has to do everything that European will become one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very clear words. It must not always be easy, also looking at the consequences. And thank you for referring to Boris Nemtsov as well. Now another voice from Russia. Mr. Kortunov, can I give you the floor? I hope we'll have time for some questions from members, but if not, we'll have to go to the second panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. First of all, let me say that I'm glad that I have a chance to be here and to speak in front of this very distinguished and very important audience. I should also congratulate the authors of the blueprints. I think that it is a balanced document, a very thoughtful document, and moreover, a very timely one. We need a new level of discussion on how this relationship can be built. And let me start with saying that I have two pieces of news for you, the bad news and the good news. And the bad news is, you should know it, but nevertheless I will repeat it. The bad news is that over the last 4 years, Russia and the European Union have not resolved a single question between them. Not just a one question. We do have Minsk agreements on Ukraine, but people are killed every day in Donbass, and nobody, at least almost nobody, believes that the Minsk agreements can be implemented in full. The European Union has its sanctions on Russia. However, these sanctions did not bring a change in the Russian policy. Moreover, many would argue with some reasons that sanctions actually consolidated the political power of Mr. Putin because they produced renationalization of the Russian economic and political elite around the leadership. We hoped that maybe Syria could become a uniting factor, some common threat that would allow us to work together specifically with Europe. However, Syria turned out to be yet another divisive factor. It's not a part of the solution. It appears to be another piece of the problem. And I can go on and on about that. And the question which I have to all of us is, suppose we get together here in this beautiful room in 4 years from now, in 2022, or in 10 years from now, in 2028. Are we going to discuss the same set of issues? Are we going to be stuck in this confrontational agenda? Do we have time, given very rapid developments in the world, given the dynamics of other regions, given the mounting problems that we have in Russia, but also here in Europe? This is my question, and this is the bad news that I have. But I also have a piece of good news. And the piece of good news, which is overlooked in all these doomsday scenarios, is that the relationship between Russia and Europe, despite all the crises that we go through right now, has demonstrated a lot of resilience. Yes, we have crises, but the European Union remains, let me remind you, remains by far the largest economic partner of the Russian Federation today. And the trade between Russia and the European Union increased by, if I'm not mistaken, by 27% last year only. Yes, we have a lot of anti-Western propaganda, and I fully agree with the point that has been made about this propaganda, but let me remind you that Russia gets more Schengen visas than any other country in the world. We can talk about Russia drifting away from Europe, but what is the region in the world which is the natural destination for Russian students who go to study abroad? Is it North Korea? Is it Iran? Is it Venezuela? Of course no. It remains Europe. There are many other areas in which we have very, very resilient collaboration. So I think that these two pieces of information basically demonstrate that the relationship is more complex than it's usually thought to be. On the one hand, we have a very clear gap in values between the Russian political leadership on the one hand and the political leadership of the European Union. It's not just about Ukraine. It's not just about Crimea. It's about the direction in which the world is going. It's about what is fair and what is not, what is legitimate and what is not. It's about the driving forces in the world. And I can tell you that the jury is still in session. We don't know where the world is going. We can only hope that it will go in the direction that we would like it to go. But on the other hand, the Russian society remains a European society. You take any sociological study, the level of education, social mobility, consumption, models, career expectations, you name it. And there is no major difference between Russia and the rest of Europe. We are Europeans. Forget about this bullshit about Eurasian values. What Eurasian values is a myth. It has never been proved. So, what do I am pointing at? I think that since we have this gap, any successful policy towards Russia or any successful relationship between Russia and Europe should be a hybrid system. It's like, a hybrid, not a hybrid warfare, but a hybrid car. You have the old engine, internal combustion engine, which has to serve our current needs and deal with current dangers, but we also should think about an electric motor. Since there is not likely to be a regime change in Russia anytime soon, I think that we can borrow a lot from the experience of the Cold War, how we can fix the relationship, how we can reduce risks, how we can make sure that the danger of war is going down and is not going up. And there are many specific steps that can be made. I agree completely that we need to restore communications at all levels, at the political level, at the level of military, maybe at the level of intelligence. It's not a concession. It's not a policy of appeasement. If you communicate, it does not mean that you agree. But if you do not communicate, there is no way to get your message through. We should restore confidence-building measures in Europe, and many of them are in jeopardy right now. This is very dangerous. And we were lucky so far that we had no accidents, no military clashes, no inadvertent escalation, but God knows whether we are going to be as lucky as we used to be. I think there are many ways in which we can work together, including arms control. They often say that arms control is not about Russian-European relations, about Russia and the United States. But tell me, who is going to suffer if INF goes down the drain. I hate to say that, but this continent will be the first to suffer. So Europe should play a more important role in this process. Likewise, I do believe that, with all due respect to the Surkov-Volker channel on East Ukraine, the European Union has to be more engaged. After all, the United States is not even a member of the Minsk process. It is Europe. It is Germany, it is France, and I think that we can expect, especially after the dust settles down in Berlin, a more active role. And I'm deeply convinced that even without changing the fundamentals, we can get to peace in East Ukraine. It is doable. It will not require unilateral surrender. It will not require Putin to resign. It can be done with some political will. We have to work on OSCE, again, without changing the fundamentals. We should put some meat on the bones of this institution, and I think hopefully right now with Italians in charge it can be done. We can do many other things, and Syria, by the way, is one of them, because in the end of the day, Russia can arguably win the war in Syria, but it cannot win the peace. It will require more partnership with the Europeans. That's the time for Europe to become more active in Syria. I don't have much time on that, but let me just shift to the second. We should understand that fundamentals are not likely to be changed anytime soon. But there is this second layer, the layer of society, which is well reflected in the document. And let me just add that, we can and we should preserve the common European educational space. Russia is a member of the Bologna process. And there is a lot of appetite. I can tell you, I travel around Russian universities. There is a lot of appetite to continue and to expand cooperation with European partners. European cultural space. The Russian culture is a part of the European culture, and this should be promoted. That should not only be maintained, but expanded. We can talk about soft security. I think that we can expect, and we should count on more cooperation between Russia and the European Union on migrations. We have this formal exchange, but I think that we can do much more than we are doing right now. I guess that we can talk about sub-regional issues. The Arctic region, for example. We were able to somehow segregate the Arctic region from the rest of the relationship, and this is good. But we can definitely do much more. And finally, I understand that my time is running out. I don't want to abuse you, but let me tell you the following, especially since there are so many young people in the audience. I do remember the dawn of perestroika when the whole thing started. I was probably as young as many people sitting here. And we thought that it would be easy. We thought, well, Russia belongs to Europe, so it is only natural for us, like for any other country, like for Poland or Estonia or Bulgaria, to get back to our roots, to get back to our true legacy, to get back to where we belong. Well, it turned out to be much more difficult, probably because we oversimplified, because we took it for granted, because we underestimated the complexities of this transition, and we have to take responsibility for what has happened. But let me tell you something. Many in Russia are skeptical about Europe. For us, Europe was the natural center of gravity, the source of inspiration, the model to follow. Many people in Russia, they question this assumption. They say, well, the European project lost its momentum. There is growing nationalism. There are many problems, migrations, transatlantic relations, financial issues. Is Europe still the beacon for us? Is it something that we should consider? Maybe we should look at Asian authoritarian models. So I wish you to prove these people wrong. And that would be probably the most important contribution to the Russian development that you can make. Thank you.
Thank you very much for looking at silver linings, for suggesting two options of putting fuel in the motor. I think it's a shame we can't talk more about sort of who's at the wheel and what the difference in guidance and leadership is there. But I'm sorry to say we've run out of time. I think this was a very important scene setter of both the complexities and perhaps the opportunities while preserving some of the key conditions that, at least for our group, are extremely important. Please don't leave the room. It's going to be a very brief shuffle, but I want to make sure that the second panel, which will focus on the role of the private sector as well as the population more deeply, has a chance to use all the time for that important aspect, but not without thanking all of our speakers for their time, for their thoughts, and for their participation. So please join me in thanking them once more.
I was given orders to start as soon as possible, just to hinder everybody from sneaking out before we have it up and running. But
Nils, you have to excuse me because
no, it's no problem.
That's why I changed my panel.
Yes. Yes. Dear friends, we are going to start immediately, and I won't speak Russian now.
You can?
Но я немножко говорю по-русски, но не очень хорошо, поэтому не буду больше по-русски здесь говорить. Ну, посмотрим как. We're going to start with Javier Nart, who is going to present the blueprint from another point of view, and after Javier's introduction, we're going to Yevgeny on my left side, and then to Yulia Galiamina on the right from Moscow, and Andreychuk. Sorry, that's the order. Oh, no, I mixed the order. It's going to be Stanislav first. But, Javier, it's your turn, please.
Muchas gracias. La situación actual entre las relaciones de Rusia con la Unión Europea es el disparate de dos vecinos que, en lugar de mirarse a la cara, se dan la espalda. La razón de todo ello ha sido la anexión de Crimea, la situación en algunas zonas en la vecindad de Rusia. Pero, en fin, contemplemos situaciones semejantes. El Estado de Israel se ha anexionado los Altos de Golán, se ha anexionado Jerusalén, coloniza los territorios en el Banco Occidental, en el Banco Oriental, en el Banco Occidental de Jordania, del río Jordán, el West Bank. Hemos creado una contestación semejante, hemos dado una respuesta parecida en términos de bloqueo, en términos de listas negras. Por favor, vamos a ser realistas. Hablamos de principios, pero un metro tiene 100 centímetros en las dos direcciones. Y la respuesta no ha sido semejante. Continuemos. Nosotros no podemos renunciar a los principios que son los fundamentos de los valores de la Unión Europea, que es la paz, la seguridad, la libertad, los derechos humanos, absolutamente. Pero entendemos que la situación de las sanciones que se han impuesto por los dos lados son positivas para los dos lados. Y una pregunta más fundamental. ¿Creemos que a través de las sanciones vamos a solucionar nuestras diferencias? ¿Con las sanciones conseguiremos una resolución positiva del conflicto que en este momento existe? ¿El silencio entre las dos partes lleva a algún lugar? El diálogo es absolutamente imperativo. Tenemos en este momento una situación de estar ciegos, mudos y sordos, mientras el conflicto se mantiene y mantenemos una posición metafísica sin dar realidad a lo que son necesidades de contestación directa. El señor Kortunov ha dicho anteriormente algo que es realidad, por ejemplo, aplicándolo a Siria, donde la respuesta debería haber sido unitaria. Estamos en este momento horrorizados por lo que pasa en Guta. Yo también conozco el lugar. Como corresponsal de guerra he estado allá. Sé lo que significa la vida en Guta y lo que significa la vida en Damasco. Digamos lo siguiente, desde Guta se bombardea Damasco y los combatientes que están en Guta son fundamentalistas radicales apoyados por Arabia Saudita y por Qatar, que son hostiles en el Golfo, pero aliados en Guta. La masacre de la población de Guta, la responsabilidad que tiene Rusia, es también nuestra propia responsabilidad por no haber sabido dar una respuesta conjunta en problemas que son conjuntos. Y cuando ha dicho el señor Kortunov que era necesario, tras la victoria en la guerra, que eran capaces de tenerla, llegar a la resolución de la paz donde somos todos necesarios, esto se llama sentido común y sentido de la realidad, y no simplemente filosofía metafísica que nos llena de gusto los oídos, pero que no resuelve absolutamente nada. Es absolutamente imperativo este diálogo. La sociedad civil es un factor esencial. Es absolutamente necesario que traspasemos los límites de las relaciones políticas para las relaciones personales. En este sentido, vuelvo a repetir, no tiene el menor sentido, primero, la existencia de las listas negras en los dos lugares, porque significa que no hay comunicación, y sin comunicación, incluso para no estar de acuerdo y, por lo tanto, determinar en qué lugares no hay posibilidad de llegar a un acuerdo, pero en otros sí podemos llegar a acuerdos. El total acuerdo es tan disparate como el ningún acuerdo. Eso es cerrar los ojos a la realidad. El Grupo Liberal está por promover de una forma importante las relaciones entre los ciudadanos de la Unión Europea y los ciudadanos de Rusia. Es absolutamente imperativo facilitar los visados, facilitar las comunicaciones, establecer una relación activa con la sociedad civil independiente. Yo soy español, conozco lo que es la dictadura y lo que son sociedades civiles conexas con cualquier régimen. Hablamos de la sociedad civil viva e independiente, que no tiene que estar en contradicción con las discrepancias que se puedan tener con la realidad política sobre el terreno. Yo estoy por esta razón extraordinariamente satisfecho de que exista esta conferencia, donde por primera vez tantos años de no mirarnos a la cara, es posible mirarnos a la cara y a lo mejor nos sorprenderemos de que tenemos más posibilidades de entendimiento que de fractura. Es loca, absolutamente disparatada una idea de pensar que la Unión Europea o Rusia pueden mantener un bloqueo continuado de las relaciones culturales, sociales, políticas y económicas. Y, en ese sentido, cerrar cualquier relación o establecer otras alternativas. Por ejemplo, el absoluto disparate del proyecto de los 3 océanos, que tiene más objetivo transatlántico que europeo. ¿Cómo vamos a romper nuestra relación económica estratégica en cuanto al suministro de energía, que es absolutamente básico, estableciendo una alternativa que no obedece a nuestros intereses estratégicos, sino a los de algunos de nuestros aliados, a los que respetamos, pero primero que ellos no nos respetan y, en segundo lugar, que son sus intereses, no necesariamente los nuestros. Tenemos que sobrepasar este actual impasse. El riesgo, el reto estratégico para la Unión Europea, para Europa Occidental, no está en Rusia, como tampoco el reto para Rusia se encuentra en la Unión Europea. El reto de la Unión Europea se encuentra en la profunda desestabilización de nuestro flanco sur, de la zona saharo-saheliana, la fragilidad de los estados del sur del Mediterráneo que afectan directamente nuestra estabilidad, no simplemente por la emigración, sino por factores estratégicos decisivos. Medio Oriente, sur del Mediterráneo, ese es nuestro reto. Y el reto de la Federación Rusa no se encuentra en Europa Occidental, se encuentra precisamente en su zona oriental. Es un reto estratégico, demográfico y económico. Por lo tanto, tengamos comprensión de cuáles son nuestras necesidades y dónde se encuentran verdaderamente nuestros conflictos. Y yo le diría a nuestros amigos rusos que, por Dios, que no se confundan, que no creen problemas menores que provocan decisiones mayores. cuando se está planteando esa guerra híbrida, llamada guerra híbrida, la desinformación, los fake news, todo esto no son más que picotazos de mosquito en un elefante, pero que crean una profunda incomodidad y que en último término pueden llevar a una crispación de las relaciones sobre temas que en sí mismos son menores, pero que son profundamente disturbadores y provocadores. Yo le diría a nuestros amigos rusos que nos ayuden a ayudarlos y que nos ayudemos todos a ayudarnos a todos en algo que es la necesidad de un futuro común, ya que hemos tenido 4 años de espalda con espalda. Mirémonos a los ojos para poder progresar. Y les voy a terminar dando la referencia de un poeta español que murió tras huir de las tropas fascistas, las tropas franquistas. Murió en el exilio, en Coyur, cerca de la frontera española. Y hay un poema que tiene una reflexión profunda. No soy poeta, pero esto me afecta y creo que define. Dice lo siguiente: caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar, pues este camino que haremos al andar es el que se ha empezado aquí y que me parece estratégicamente fundamental, romper el hielo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Javier. You got a small introduction to the Babel's Tower of the European Parliament, where we speak a lot of different languages and we sometimes understand each other, which is a good introduction to what we are going to discuss here. During my years as a journalist in Moscow, that was 95 to 99, we spoke a lot about civil society. And I think some of us had very childish ideas of how easily a civil society is built. We probably have to learn that to build a functioning civil society, we need some 200 years. The Russian society is just on the first meters of this long run. But it's still it's on the run anyway. So now we start with Stanislav Andreychuk, member of the Federal Council for Golos, and then we go to Yevgeny Gantmacher, a professor at National Research University for Higher Education of of Economics, and then we go, last but not least, to Yulia Galiamina. She is the municipal deputy of Moskovskая Timiryazevskaya район. Правильно я сказал. Okay. Please, the floor is yours, Stanislav.
Thank you for this possibility to take part in discussion, but I will add one more language. I will speak Russian as soon as we have a translation. Организаторы сегодняшней дискуссии поставили вообще очень непростую задачу передо мной. Они попросили рассказать о том, чего не существует. Имеется в виду, что они попросили рассказать о президентских выборах в России. Конечно, то, что в России называется президентскими выборами, это не является ни честными, ни свободными, ни выборами вообще. Это некая процедура переназначения действующего главы государства. Но при этом мне бы не хотелось слишком сгущать краски, потому что на самом деле мы видим два очень разных тренда, которые происходят прямо сейчас касательно выборов не конкретных, а касательно выборов как института и вообще того, что происходит у нас в этой сфере. Но еще раз, начнем с того, что то, что произойдет 18 марта и то, что происходит сейчас, это, конечно, выборами называется очень условно. Почему так? Потому что если мы с вами посмотрим на то, как происходит эта процедура, то мы увидим, что она нарушается на всех 3 этапах. То есть у нас есть 3 этапа избирательной кампании. У нас есть регистрация кандидатов, допуск их к участию в выборах. И мы сегодня видели интервью с Алексеем Навальным, которого как раз не допустили к выборам, хотя совершенно очевидно, что у него есть определенная общественная поддержка. Мы не знаем до конца какая, потому что последний раз он участвовал в выборах в 2013 году, и это были выборы мэра Москвы, то есть совершенно другой уровень. Но какая-то поддержка есть. Это видно по тем акциям, которые он проводит, это видно по тому, сколько людей было готово поставить подписи за его выдвижение по всей стране и так далее. При этом на выборы были допущены люди, у которых совершенно очевидно поддержки гораздо меньше, чем у Навального. Мы, в общем, даже сомневаемся, что они собрали там необходимое количество подписей, необходимое для их регистрации. Поэтому это была процедура допуска людей, удобных для действующего президента, для того, чтобы с ними соревноваться. В общем, не очень честная конкуренция, прямо скажем. Да, когда у вас один из игроков рынка определяет, кого допустить в качестве конкурентов на этот самый рынок. Второй момент, второй этап – это то, что касается у нас самой избирательной кампании. Насколько честно, справедливо она идет, насколько равные условия создаются для кандидатов. Здесь мы тоже видим определенные дисбалансы. Мы видим злоупотребление тем самым административным ресурсом, термин, который, насколько я понимаю, из русского языка пришел и в документы ОБСЕ, и все остальные. Это наше ноу-хау, наш вклад, так сказать, в развитие политической мысли. Но эти проблемы есть. Мы сейчас ведем в еженедельном режиме медиамониторинг наших 5 центральных телеканалов. И мы видим там, значит, прекрасную совершенно историю, когда 2 кандидата, имеется в виду действующий президент Владимир Путин, у него за последние 4 недели все комментарии, которые давались СМИ вот по этим 5 телеканалам, были либо нейтральные, либо позитивные, ни одного негативного комментария. А представитель второй по силе партии, имеется в виду Коммунистическая партия Российской Федерации, Павел Грудинин, у него прямо обратная картина, прямо зеркальная. То есть все комментарии, которые даются, они, как правило, даются в негативном ключе. Если мы вот этот медиаиндекс посчитаем, вот эту разницу между позитивными и негативными, то у Путина он примерно плюс 30, плюс 50 от недели к неделе, у Грудинина минус 50, минус 75 было на позапрошлой неделе. 75% комментариев было негативным по нашим оценкам. И в этом смысле тоже, да, говорить о... Это чаще всего эти 5 каналов принадлежат государству. Или являются каналами с государственным участием, или там, если это мы говорим про канал НТВ, то он принадлежит «Газпрому», что, в общем, тоже принадлежит государству, да, так или иначе. И это значит, что государство, которое должно соблюдать принцип политического нейтралитета во время избирательной кампании, этот принцип, конечно, не соблюдает, создавая преференции одному кандидату. Мы видим, как в регионах, ну, скажем, в Алтайском крае практически там в один день вышло 23 перепечатки одной и той же статьи против Павла Грудинина в разных местных газетах, опять же, принадлежащих государству. Ну, то есть это, конечно, все не очень вяжется с пониманием честной конкуренции. Третий этап мы пока не можем оценивать. Понятно, что мы его увидим 18 марта, как будут проходить сами выборы, насколько честным будет подсчет и так далее. Пока та практика, которая у нас есть, говорит, что в стране у нас есть 2 таких кластера. Один относительно чистый, где действительно проходят относительно честные выборы, ну, по российским меркам, честный подсчет. Есть кластер закрытый, который, по нашему мнению, там просто рисуются результаты. Это Северный Кавказ, большая его часть, это Татарстан, Башкортостан и ряд других регионов. Это там, где явка под 90, а то и больше процентов, и результаты голосования за любого административного кандидата тоже 90 и больше процентов. Понятно, что таких результатов не бывает, потому что если вы приедете в Дагестан, то окажется, что там в деревнях живет процентов 30 от списочного состава населения, а все остальные уехали на заработки в Москву. Поэтому там не может быть явки 90%, но просто потому, что людей нет. Но как это будет происходить, мы посмотрим. Но вот я такую черную немножко картину нарисовал. Она действительно по сравнению с европейскими выборами не очень светлая. Но надо понимать, собственно, в какую сторону движение у нас сейчас происходит. И там движение очень непростое. Потому что, с одной стороны, мы видим... как действительно очень нервно реагируют власти и на Алексея Навального, который остался участником этих выборов де-факто, потому что его сторонники ведут агитацию за бойкот выборов. Реагируют действительно нервно, задерживая людей, помещая их в тюрьму, хотя, в общем, изымая агитацию, штрафуя и так далее. Хотя, в общем, у нас в законе декларируется, что каждый гражданин имеет право, в общем, и против участия в выборах тоже агитировать. Это не запрещено. Мы видим, как на нашу организацию периодически оказывается какое-то давление. У нас вот там тоже буквально там пару недель назад координатора в одном из южных регионов арестовали на 5 суток. 5 суток небольшой срок по сравнению с тем, что со многими происходит, но тем не менее. Там еще 2 недели назад у нас наблюдателя на сутки закрыли, прямо забрав его с избирательного участка, ну и так далее. Да, такие истории есть. Но, тем не менее, мы видим и обратные процессы. Мы видим, что реакция на то же самое, на те случаи, когда мы фиксируем действительно использование административного ресурса, какие-то нарушения, реакция меняется. Реакция публичная становится, по крайней мере, такой, что власти начинают реагировать. То есть представить 5 лет назад, чтобы Центр избирком сделал выговор пресс-секретарю президента за то, что он допустил какое-то агитационное высказывание, было невозможно. У нас сейчас это есть. Было невозможно 5 лет назад представить, что подписи, собранные на одном из заводов с нарушением законодательства самим штабом Путина, будут признаны там, незаконными и не будут использоваться там, и так далее. Это, с одной стороны, конечно, некая иллюзия, но само по себе декларирование публичное того, что это нельзя и это нехорошо, это для выборов как института, на наш взгляд, явление позитивное. Вопрос в том, сохранится ли оно после 18 марта, или вот 18 марта вся эта благодать закончится. Ну и кроме того, мы видим, как само общество на самом деле меняется. Потому что, если мы с вами посмотрим, ну что происходит? У нас, извините меня, тысячи людей выходят на митинги, которые запрещены, и эти тысячи людей знают, что их могут арестовать и поместить в тюрьму. Но люди выходят. Тысячи людей 18 марта пойдут на избирательные участки, и некоторые там мои знакомые из Москвы готовы ехать в Дагестан, наблюдать на избирательных участках. Вообще, честно говоря, не самое безопасное занятие. Люди готовы участвовать вот во всех проектах по развитию НКО. Общество само меняется. Есть люди, которые работают в избирательных комиссиях, которые 5 лет назад были готовы фальсифицировать результаты выборов, а сейчас говорят, нет, мы не будем. Да, я заканчиваю. Переходя уже непосредственно к тому, что написано в документе. И в этом плане, мне кажется, очень важно вот тот посыл, который в документе есть, про поддержку гражданского общества, про снятие визовых каких-то ограничений, про открытие вот этих, максимальное открытие контактов в человеческом измерении. Кроме того, что еще, на наш взгляд, может сделать Евросоюз? Буквально очень тезисно. Во-первых, надо понимать, что если мы говорим про санкции, то они не затрагивают, например, очень такую специфическую группу, как доноров политических партий. Потому что очень многие доноры политических партий, во-первых, имеют контакты и партнеров здесь, в Европе. Во-вторых, значительная их часть зарегистрирована в европейских офшорах. И это тот инструмент влияния, который есть у Евросоюза, в том числе и на внутреннюю ситуацию в России. Потому что должна быть такая ситуация, когда поддерживать людей, которые вводят законы, нарушающие права человека, должно быть экономически невыгодно. С точки зрения бизнеса просто-напросто. Во-вторых, мы сейчас видим последние несколько лет нашествие так называемых фейковых международных наблюдателей, в том числе из стран Евросоюза, из Европейского парламента, в том числе из национальных парламентов. Как правило, это представители крайне правых партий. Часть из них уже приехала, часть из них сидит сейчас уже в российских регионах и дает комментарии про то, какие прекрасные и честные выборы в России и как далеко Европе до нашей лучшей в мире избирательной системы. Это на самом деле это цитаты практически. Вы можете их найти. У нас в 2016 году приезжал, например, такой господин Д'Артаньян из Франции. Потомок того самого Д'Артаньяна, как он говорит. И последнее, это скорее, мне кажется, то, к чему Европейский Союз, европейские страны должны быть готовы. Я не знаю, может быть, я сгущаю краски, а может быть, я наоборот в чем-то их слишком ярко рисую, но я думаю, что после 18 марта, когда пройдут президентские выборы, Неизвестно, как они пройдут, потому что нет у нас реальной социологии, мы не видим, что там реально происходит, каковы реальные предпочтения граждан, можем только на ощупь, да, вот так вот навскидку прикидывать, какова будет явка, каково будет реальное голосование за тех или иных кандидатов. Но я не исключаю того, что после 18 марта поток политических беженцев из числа гражданских активистов к вам возрастет. И это, к сожалению, плохая новость, и хотелось бы, чтобы Евросоюз в этом случае тоже был готов и как-то более-менее дружелюбен. Спасибо.
Огромное спасибо, Станислав. Я вынужден быть довольно строгий, потому что у нас время всегда горит. Thank you very much. I don't go into the fake observers and fake news, but even if it's very interesting, I give the word to the next speaker. That's Evgeny Gontmacher.
Thanks a lot for this invitation, but I'd like to continue this good tradition to speak Russian, because Russian here is official language in our parliament too. It's a very good perspective for Russian. Okay. Ну, во-первых, я хочу сказать, что я прочитал внимательно подготовленный документ, blueprint. Он, конечно, очень интересен. Сразу скажу свой вывод и предложение. Это хорошая точка для начала дискуссии о российско-европейских отношениях. И, кстати, сразу хочу сказать, что, мне кажется, следующий раунд такой дискуссии надо проводить в Москве, в России. Ну, лучше в Москве. Для удобства транспорта. Почему в Москве? Я в данном случае здесь представляю экспертную группу «Европейский диалог». Мы ее организовали где-то 1,5 года назад. Это неформальная группа, но у нас есть свой веб-сайт, его можно найти легко в Гугле. Почему мы это сделали? Потому что тут вот мои коллеги уже говорили о том, что есть такая точка зрения в России, что Россия не Европа, но дело хуже. На самом деле в России сейчас идет гигантский эксперимент над людьми, который похож на эксперимент над человеком в советское время. Потому что внедряется в сознание, особенно молодежи, очень, я бы сказал, эффективно. Такая точка зрения, что традиционные европейские институты, они вообще для России не годятся изначала. Ну, демократия. Ну, какая демократия? В России, вы видите, несмотря на отдельные успехи, у нас есть муниципальные депутаты наши, это очень хорошо, но в целом местное самоуправление фактически уничтожено, оно стало огосударствлено. Про выборы вот уже Станислав говорил, как они у нас проводятся, мы знаем судьбу Навального. Если говорить о рыночной экономике, но здесь я как экономист могу сказать, что мы фактически ее уничтожили, потому что у нас отсутствие конкуренции, у нас роль государства преобладающая, государство контролирует более половины экономики. Это, конечно, никакого отношения к рынку, в общем, не имеет. Ну, про права человека снова говорить не буду. Вы тут все прекрасно знаете, что происходит в России. И мы, вот группа экспертов, решили фактически выступить в роли такого интеллектуального сопротивления. Потому что мы считаем, что вот эти ценности, о которых я уже сказал, демократия, социальная рыночная экономика, безусловно, и права человека – это ценности, на которые должен строиться будущее России, несмотря ни на что. И мы со своей стороны пытаемся вести работу. Мы вот будем проводить конференцию, издаю вместе с нашими немецкими коллегами книжку в марте уже по угрозе правого левого популизма и в Европе, и в России в том числе. Мы в конце этого года издадим книгу о вызовах либерализма в 21 веке и тоже будем проводить конференцию. Мы очень плотно работаем с нашими украинскими коллегами. Понятно, что наша точка зрения меняет десятков, может быть, уже сотен экспертов, которые с нами работают на неформальной основе по поводу нашего конфликта с Украиной. Абсолютно очевидно и понятно, что Россия совершила колоссальную ошибку. И, в общем, ее надо исправлять. И вот я просто об этом сказал. Да, кстати, вчера, да, действительно, день памяти Немцова. Я его хорошо очень знал, мы были друзьями, мы работали вместе в правительстве. И вы знаете, после его смерти, буквально через 2 дня я увидел его интервью агентству «France Press», где он спорит со мной о целом ряде вопросов. Это был какой-то голос с того света. Это для меня был просто шок. Вот. И мы вчера проводили, как раз наша группа «Европейский диалог», мы вчера проводили в Сахаровском центре конференцию, посвященную его памяти, с таким названием «Правовое государство в России. Миссия невозможна?» Вопросительный знак. Где были, кстати говоря, лидеры Парнаса, был Михаил Михайлович Касьянов, была госпожа Слабунова, лидер «Яблока», и был Андрей Нечаев, который выдвинул, собственно, госпожу Собчак в кандидаты в президенты, то есть партия «Гражданская инициатива». И что касается теперь документов, чтобы вы понимали, почему я оцениваю документы именно с этой точки, с моей позиции. Значит, надо четко разделить два вопроса. Первый вопрос – это межгосударственные отношения и отношения между политическими элитами. С моей точки зрения, это, конечно, нужно, как тут вот некоторые коллеги европейские говорили, приезжать в Москву, общаться с нашими чиновниками, депутатами нашей Государственной Думы, это все правильно, но это бесполезно. Потому что это все ритуально. Понимаете, когда вы приходите на встречу с депутатами нашей Государственной Думы, и многих из них я хорошо знаю, они вам никогда правду не скажут. Они говорят то, что им написали или сказали в администрации президента. Понимаете, вы, как европейцы, как люди, стоящие на определенных моральных ценностях, например, не врать. Вы разговариваете с людьми, которые вам врут в глаза. Так же, как и наши пропагандисты, о которых здесь уже говорили, которые имеют дом в Италии. Я недавно был на озере Кома, видел этот дом, где живет господин Соловьев. Какие вещи вы не смотрите наше телевидение, я надеюсь, это правильно. Но он такие вещи говорит про Европу, про европейскую цивилизацию, он просто врет. И при этом он находится, проводит свое время, и не только он. Вот господин Никонов у нас есть, председатель комитета по-моему, там образованию. Все ровно то же самое. Поэтому я бы сказал так, пока не поменяется ситуация в нашей политической элите, это отдельный вопрос, как она будет меняться. К сожалению, видимо, не демократическим путем, ну, этого никто не знает, все зависит от господина Путина, но надо не терять времени Европе, надо действительно общаться, здесь правильно об этом сказано, с нашим гражданским обществом. Тут есть тоже несколько направлений. Ну, визы – это очевидный вопрос. Я считаю, что Европа допустила колоссальную ошибку, когда отказалась отменять визы с Россией. Помните, это было еще достаточно давно, когда все было готово, а потом под какими-то предлогами этого не было сделано. Но дело даже не в этом. Сейчас 21 век. Мне кажется, что даже вот обмен, допустим, студентами – это немножко устаревшие вещи. Киберпространство. Мы говорим про кибервойну, что, конечно, очень плохо, и с этим, понятно, надо бороться. Это колоссальный вызов, и для Европы в том числе. Но есть киберпространство сотрудничества. Почему вы, молодые коллеги, вот, которые здесь сидят, тоже университетское академическое сообщество, не входите в прямые контакты с нашим молодежным сообществом? Не делайте форумы, сайты, куда привлекаете наших коллег для того, чтобы вместе что-то обсуждать и прочее. Это принципиально важно. В это надо вкладывать деньги, в это надо вкладывать ресурсы. Это должна быть определенная политика. Да, есть Russia Today, можно там, вот вы знаете, на Россию тоже работают там какие-то радиостанции, которых я, кстати, тоже не слушаю, хотя очень уважаю, типа Радио Свободы, там еще кто-то. Надо через киберпространство, через интернет обязательно выходить. Вот это новое измерение политики face-to-face. Это принципиально важный вопрос. Мне кажется, здесь Европа эту ситуацию недооценивает. И экспертное сообщество. Я не говорю за все гражданское общество, потому что оно в России довольно большое, оно разное. Но вот экспертное сообщество, к которому я принадлежу, находится в России в бедственном положении. Потому что, я бы сказал так, большая часть сошла с ума. Так скажем, потому что я когда слушаю некоторых моих уважаемых коллег, профессоров, докторов и так далее, которые говорят о каких-то вот этом, особый путь какой-то, традиционные ценности, о которых я их спрашиваю, а вы мне скажите, какие ценности традиционно отличают Россию, допустим, от Германии? Никто этого не скажет. Или вот тут недавнее заявление господина Шувалова, который, правда, не относится к экспертам, он у нас первый вице-премьер, который сказал, что российский народ более талантливый, чем американский. Ну, я, честно говоря, отношу это только к тому, что люди сходят с ума. Или они пытаются угодить какой-то политической конъюнктуре достаточно глупо. Но у нас еще осталась часть экспертного сообщества, которая фактически отрезана от нормального диалога, общения с Европой. Потому что нет денег, реально, нет денег. Вот эти все там гранты, которые у нас там люди... Ну, у нас есть грантовые фонды в России, они очень маленькие, вы сами понимаете, что особенно в общественных науках, то, что связано с экономикой, социологией, очень сложно получить деньги, их почти нет. Надо включать российское экспертное сообщество, которое осталось еще в дискуссии о европейском будущем, о нашем общем европейском будущем России и оставшейся Европы, я бы так сказал. Потому что когда говорят Россия и Европа, подразумевается, что Европа сама по себе, Россия сама по себе. Нет. Мы тоже находимся в Европе. И действительно от Лиссабона, может быть, от Ванкувера до Токио и до Владивостока. Токио. Я недавно был на Тайване, абсолютно европейская сторона с точки зрения институтов. Мы будем проводить конференцию, наша группа с фондом Гайдара осенью, которая будет посвящена тому, как европейские институты прижились в Японии, Южной Корее и на Тайване. У нас уже есть реакция оттуда, довольно положительная. Потому что другой модели, чем европейская, пока цивилизация не изобрела. Действительно эффективная модель, со всеми проблемами. Значит, последнее. Time. I know. I calculate my time, no problem. Значит, Европа сейчас, конечно, переживает, как всегда, это типичное состояние для Европы, не то что кризис, но нарастание большой массы проблем. Мы видим, да, внутренних проблем. Это и проблемы популизма, проблемы демократии, экономики, социальной сферы, миграции, то же самое и так далее и тому подобное. Мы же прекрасно все понимаем, что эти проблемы именно из-за дискуссии они будут преодолены. Дискуссия помогает выработать какие-то решения. Подключайте наших российских экспертов к этой дискуссии. Мне надоели дискуссии, честно говоря, европейские о том, что происходит в России. Это все понятно. Это с времен кремлинологии, советологии. Диагнозы я вам могу тут прочитать лекцию на 1,5 часа, что из себя представляет нынешний путинский режим, как любят сейчас говорить. Вопрос не в этом. Это отдельный вопрос, который тоже, конечно, надо. Вот нас интересует. Мы не хотим отстать от европейского мейнстрима. Когда в России когда-нибудь, мы надеемся, откроется политическое окно возможностей, которого пока нет, вдруг оно откроется, и Россия должна быть готова войти в Европу, а не отстать навсегда в интеллектуальном смысле. Вот я хотел бы на это обратить внимание. И самое последнее, возвращаясь к тому, что я уже сказал, давайте этот документ обсуждать в России. Это мое предложение авторам. ALDE, очень хороший документ. Мы готовы с нашей стороны такое обсуждение организовать. Спасибо.
Большое спасибо, Евгений. I especially like the idea of cyber friendship. I think this is really a good start, but we'll return to that later. And now I give the floor to Yulia Galiamina, who will give us a picture of the real life in Moscow.
Yes, not only in Moscow but in Russia all. But I will speak Russian too. Я представляю здесь не только гражданское общество, но и новую политику, новых политиков, которые сейчас возникают в России. И как политик начну со знаменитой политической фразы «I have a dream». У меня есть мечта, я надеюсь и мечтаю, что когда-нибудь вот на таких встречах Россия вместе с Европой, с Европейским Союзом совместно будут обсуждать развитие гражданского общества во всем мире, в Европе, и Россия будет равным партнером Европы в этом вопросе. Однако пока что очевидно, что наше гражданское общество, демократия в нашей стране находится не на таком развитом уровне, как в Европейском Союзе. И пока что нам необходимо партнерство с Европой и помощь со стороны Европы в развитии наших гражданских институтов, в развитии демократии в России. Однако, какое это может быть партнерство? Здесь я повторю за своими коллегами простую мысль, что это партнерство возможно только на основе общих ценностей, на основе понимания того, с кем вообще можно договариваться, какие партнеры являются людьми, которые разделяют европейские ценности, а кто нет. И надо понимать, что из себя представляет сегодня гражданское общество. Мы должны понимать, что нынешнее гражданское общество в России, оно немножко изменилось за последние 2-3 года. Сегодня это не просто некоммерческие организации, как это было, и какое есть представление, я уверена, у многих европейских партнеров. Сегодня возникают новые низовые движения, grassroots, новые благотворительные движения, движения экологические, городские и так далее. То есть в гражданское общество вступают новые люди. И это очень хорошо. Но надо понимать, что вот эта картинка о том, что есть 86% и 14% там, или 10% людей, которые разделяют европейские ценности, и те, кто не разделяет европейские ценности, это неправильная картинка, потому что у нас существует динамика. У нас есть люди, которые, возможно, не понимают и не разделяют и не понимают те ценности, которые сейчас понятны каждому европейцу, например, ценности толерантности и равного отношения ко всем людям, вне зависимости от их гендера, от их цвета кожи, от их национальности и так далее. Но наши люди, наши граждане начинают этот путь шаг за шагом. Они пытаются изменить свое отношение к демократии. Вернее, не то, что они пытаются, они меняют его потихонечку, потому что небольшие успехи общественных движений в решении конкретных проблем местного значения, проблем, которые волнуют каждого человека, приводят к их пониманию ценности демократии как того, что дает им возможности в жизни, то, что дает им благо, то, что дает им новые, то, что они не могли получить другим путем. И поэтому наша задача с вами развивать это движение, помогать людям узнавать ценность демократии. И через новые практики, которые возникают сейчас в России. В частности, это привело, например, к победе довольно большого количества независимых оппозиционных депутатов в Москве на последних выборах. И это привело к тому, что на последних выборах в Псковской области победило 40 независимых оппозиционных депутатов. И такие процессы сейчас идут по всей стране. Их интенсивность зависит от тех усилий, которые вкладываются в их осуществление. И хорошая новость состоит в том, что наши власти, наш режим нынешний, чтобы они не делали, на каком уровне они все равно проигрывают, потому что когда они дают нам пространство для свободы, мы это пространство тут же занимаем. А как только они его ужимают, тут же возникает ответная реакция, как это было, например, с процессом реновации в Москве, когда у людей попытались отобрать их собственность. Это подняло огромную волну возмущения, и вышли на улицы люди, которые никогда раньше даже не задумывались о том, что они могут выйти на митинг. Во многих домах появились домовое самоуправление. Люди начали интересоваться тем, что происходит вокруг них, и победа в муниципальных выборах в Москве – это во многом реакция на вот эти неправильные и ограничивающие права человека действия московских властей. Поэтому это такой своеобразный цугцванг. И в этой ситуации мы всегда выигрываем, если мы правильно действуем. Мы как оппозиция, как гражданское общество. В связи с тем, что у нас изменилась ситуация в стране, я считаю, что и подходы нашего европейского, российского партнерства должны изменяться. Должно появиться больше открытости. И я соглашусь с коллегами, что нужно, чтобы европейцы чаще и больше приезжали в Россию и в разные города, не только в Москву, и в большие города, чтобы можно было вести этот прямой диалог между россиянами и нероссиянами. И это может быть и экспертное сообщество, и научное сообщество. Но надо просто уйти от идеи, что это общение только на государственном уровне. Существует еще такой важный документ, который объединяет Россию и Европу, и объединяет юридически. Это Европейская хартия местного самоуправления. И я сегодня хочу сказать, что местное самоуправление – это тот самый путь, по которому, мне кажется, Россия может пойти и изменить отношение к демократии в нашей стране, изменить вообще наше политическое устройство в этом смысле. Поэтому общение на уровне муниципалитетов, на уровне городов, партнерские отношения, вот как программа городов-побратимов, которые, по сути, сейчас она осталась где-то в прошлом, а это очень важная история. И здесь мы должны сказать, опять же, про упрощение визового режима. Возможно, можно это сделать шаг за шагом, потому что, например, отменить пока визы по обмену вот между городами, между муниципальными объединениями. Это тоже было бы хорошим шагом и подспорьем к развитию народной низовой дипломатии, о которой мы все забыли. И, конечно, нужно больше информации, необходимы русскоязычные СМИ, которые бы рассказывали о жизни в Европе, потому что россияне очень мало про это знают. Рассказывали интересно, а не с точки зрения как бы вот чистой политики, да, рассказывали о том, как живут простые европейцы, которые... поскольку это будет, должно быть обращено к простым россиянам, которые, по сути, тоже европейцы и могут ими стать в большей степени, и в политическом смысле тоже. Но мы при этом не должны забывать о том, что в России все равно происходит постоянное нарушение прав человека. И нарушение прав человека не только на самом высоком уровне, не только в тех историях, которые вы все знаете, не только на выборах в президента, но и на местных выборах, и на историях обычной жизни обычных людей, как, например, произошло в нашем районе Тимирязевском, который сейчас уже назвали, где у нас просто украли, 28 голосов приписали, 28 фальшивых галочек, и депутат, независимый кандидат, потерял свое место в пользу депутата от «Единой России». И это происходит повсеместно, и про это мало кто знает, про это мало говорят. И я надеюсь, что про это тоже будут говорить вслух, как... И насчет санкций я хочу сказать, что идея о том, что не надо их надо сокращать, персональные санкции, мне кажется неверной, наоборот. Тут как раз и нужно разделить тех россиян, которые, пускай они даже состоят в «Единой России», неважно, если они не нарушают законы, не нарушают права человека, это одни люди, и люди, которые нарушают законы и права человека, другие люди. Санкции должны, наоборот, спуститься на более низкий уровень. Как, например, вот довольно высокая... фигура заммэра Москвы Барат Хуснуллин, он по расследованию Transparency International был получателем взятки за строительство дома в парке, которым рядом с моим домом, парке Дубки. И ничего не сделалось в России. И он точно так же спокойно приезжает в Европу. А при этом это очевидно, что это человек, который нарушает права людей, права местного сообщества и экологические права. И таких историй, ну, их очень много. Но и надо этих людей поделить, тех, кто нарушает права человека и не нарушает. Поэтому я, резюмируя, хочу сказать, что нам очень важен диалог на всех уровнях, и прежде всего на уровне людей, на уровне местного самоуправления, причем с людьми самого разного толка, но самое главное не отделить тех людей, которые нарушают права человека, и тех, которых не нарушают права человека, и с теми, кто это с честными людьми продолжать и расширять диалог, внедряя и расширяя идею демократии как очень ценности не только абстрактной, но просто практической. Вот это, об этом я хотела сказать. Спасибо.
Thank you, Yulia. I think what you said about spaces of democracy on the local level is an eye-opener, and it's actually a very practical approach to democracy and civil society, because, and if you go back to the 90s, when we thought that Russia could be changed, then we probably saw that we had a thought that, okay, Yeltsin's going to take care of it, so you started it from above. And all of a sudden, there was too much vodka and too little results. So what you said about starting from the bottom or going up is probably more a democratic approach than anything else. Now, we have some minutes left. I couldn't resist the temptation to give the word back to Wolfgang Ischinger for one reason. He started his introduction 2 hours ago by speaking about his experiences as a diplomat. When you listen to these three not diplomats and not very diplomatic in the way you're expressing the views, what would your take be, please?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the presentations we've heard from our Russian guests this morning produce good news and bad news. Good news in the sense that we are being encouraged, I think, and we're being told in very clear words that we should be more courageous and more committed, and we should defend more vigorously the kinds of principles that we stand for. That's the good news. The bad news is that, of course, trying to change things requires, unfortunately, more than only efforts and goodwill on our side. I think I said at the beginning of my own brief statement, and I didn't mean that jokingly, it always takes two to tango. And so long as we, representing governments or institutions such as the European Union, so long as we have no alternative but to work with other governments, and in this case the government of the Russian Federation, we need to acknowledge that the difficulties are, and I think that is my takeaway from this morning, the difficulties are sometimes even greater than we like to think. Let me just offer one thought. I think that my own experience over the last several decades of practical diplomacy is that the element of time is sometimes underrated in judging diplomatic efforts. What I'm trying to say is, we want to achieve a certain result. Then we realize that that certain result is not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen in the spring of 2018. But it is quite possible to imagine, and I speak as a German, we didn't think that German reunification would happen any time during our lifetime. All of a sudden it happened. In other words, there is a time when maybe things will begin to change. And the big challenge for statesmen, for political leaders, and for diplomats is to make sure that we don't miss the right moment. And in order not to miss the right moment, we need to also develop a degree of strategic patience. Patience doesn't mean that we should fall asleep. Patience means that we should be extremely attentive and be in touch and wait for the right moment in order to try to obtain change when the other side is willing to work with us. So that is what I would argue is an important point. Not to lose optimism and the energy to work to obtain change, but to also develop a degree of patience. There will be a moment when we will be able to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This strategic patience is probably the real word for it, when the other side is willing to tango. Well, with these words, I give the floor to Hilde Woutmans. She's Deputy ALDE Coordinator in AFET, one of the committees for those who are not inside. So please, Hilde.
Thank you very much, colleague. Honourable guests, dear colleagues, I think we can all agree that it was a very interesting seminar today. I think we heard a lot of speakers, we heard a lot of guests, and so I think we can all agree that the seminar did not take a minute too soon. I think what we heard today, oftenly the relations between Russia and the EU are currently stalled in deadlock due to reciprocal sanctions and the boycott or political, economic relations are dramatic. And everybody can feel this. Also we can do. We feel the consequences of this frozen relationship. Our farmers feel it. I didn't hear talking about them today, but in Europe, the farmers pay the bill of this economic Russian boycott. Moreover, on the long run, the situation is deadly for geopolitical relations. Today, and also this I heard many times, a whole generation of young Russian people grow up with anti-European feelings. We cannot accept this. This, for me, is the main point why we should have another relationship with Russia. A whole generation of young people, a whole generation get lost, I can say that. So this, for me, it's very important to work on this. And also, I think we must not forget that Russia is a neighbor of us. Russia is a neighboring country. It is Russian. That's what I heard here today. It's also active on the political scene worldwide, sometimes even against Europe. So this is a second reason why we really must have a new strategy. And therefore I think this seminar put forward very clear that the ALDE blueprint for a new relationship with Russia is the right way forward. This new relationship, step by step, the two ways tango. I can't do a tango, but I know what you mean. We need two to tango. That's very important. So let us agree that in exchange for political change and effective anti-corruption measures, we can normalize the political, economic and security relations with Russia. Russia must strengthen its rule of law with real independent courts and fair and free elections. That's for us also very clear. Russia's economy is in such a bad state that they need this normalization too. And also Europe does not win with this Russian boycott. Our people, our farmers are suffering every day from this boycott. Hence, for every positive step that Russia takes, there should be an opening in the economic situation. In the meantime, I heard a lot of times here, Europe can make a difference. Europe should take the lead. Well, I couldn't agree more. That's why we are here in the European Parliament today. So let me put 3 steps forward which are very crucial. First, restore the trust between Europe and Russia. First point. Secondly, let us proceed and increase our support to civil society in Russia. Very important. And thirdly, let us attract Russian students, researchers, entrepreneurs who cannot enjoy their fundamental freedoms in Russia in order to exchange knowledge, experience, economic project. With a visa liberalization for Russian citizens, we can lead the way and show them what freedom is and what could also be the reality in Russia. I want to conclude, Mr. Ischinger, with the words of Harmel, like you say, because that's for me very important. Also, it's already an old vision. I think it's still very valued. So, as much defense of our values and borders, as much dialogue as possible. Yulia, let us fulfill the dream you have. Let's work on it, and don't miss this political moment. I don't like too much patience. I like to use this political moment to go for it. Let's do it together. Thank you very much.
Pavel, can I leave the last words to you?
Niels, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I think this is, and this has been a great seminar. The only deficiency of this seminar is that we didn't have some of the political leaders sitting here in the front benches, both on the EU side, and not just the prolonged hands of Kremlin like my president, but also those that sometimes lack a vision, and maybe a courage also to deliver, and also the ability to implement what we already have in our hands in terms of our policies and also shape, let's say, our future policies. And of course, the same applies to the Russian leadership, as maybe difficult it would be to imagine, but I think that also many of what has been said here today might have had at least a marginal effect. Now, what I'm happy about is that this seminar was not about Russia. This seminar was about our relations between the European Union and Russia. And in fact, I have to once again, Ambassador Ischinger will be famous now for tango, apart from his CV. But I would say, yes, tango. And I think that somehow it is about making sure that we will stand up and go and see the partner and say, would you like to tango? And that partner would say, okay, let's do it, even if it were with difficulties and stepping on our toes, and if it were, let's say, a bit of practicing in the back room, so to say, and on some, let's say, relatively not high scene, let's say, dancing floors. But yes, but what does it mean? What does it take to one day have the tango? Because I subscribe to the description made by Ambassador Ischinger and others. And let's have a look at the European Union. Common foreign security policy. We have it. I mean, basically we have it. And how good are we in its implementation? And I think, again, it has been said today that it takes a few phone calls between some of the capitals where you still cannot deprive yourself of the feeling in a certain member state that you can do better bilaterally with a phone call and that you can maybe achieve something which is in your high interest. And I think that this is a part of the problem. We have spoken about the defense union. I would subscribe to it entirely. But the defense union is still somewhere ahead of us. We need to work for it. And a lot of justification has been put forward today why we also need it in our relationship to Russia. But CFSP, I mean, it's there. And I mean, let's evaluate how strong we are and how able we are to implement it. Energy, again, mentioned. I think also I think it was Ambassador Ischinger that gave us a nice hierarchy. I mean, and energy fits in that hierarchy. And it's not just a question of energy security, but I think it strengthens us also in terms of what are going to be our abilities and capabilities in preparing ourselves for that tango. Now, I think the key words that have been said is that we need, and therefore we lack, a strategic consensus on our objectives. I think it was Ambassador Ischinger. I will go further. We lack a strategy. And that's basically it. And I think that the blueprint should be seen exactly in the context of trying to provoke a debate, a serious political debate among the political leadership in the European Union so that we arrive at a strategy. I mean, it still will be difficult to implement it for the reasons that I've already explained, but it will make it more difficult to refrain from it. Now, Russia. I mean, I've deliberately referred to some of the political leadership because maybe somewhere it's just a lack of knowledge, lack of courage, lack of ability, but also somewhere it is a question of naivety. I think we have heard a lot today. I mean, what is the real picture in Russia? Very complimentary, but still giving us a relatively complex picture. I won't go into details, but if I have spoken about the EU weaknesses, well, in Russia, I mean, it's not about weaknesses, it's about disrespect to the principles and values that are democracies, with all the deficiencies that we have in the European Union that we are based on. Now, I won't spend more time on Russia, but so where do we go from here on? And I think that whatever will be done in any of the pillars that have been mentioned, conditionality for me is the key word. I mean, you can be successful in a policy if you really apply conditionality. And I think that also Mr. Androsov and others have mentioned concrete examples where, in fact, we are weak in implementing. And in fact, I welcome what you have said on the visa issue vis-à-vis those officials that are responsible for implementing decisions that have been taken either at the European Court for Human Rights or elsewhere, but the same, of course, applies to freezing of assets. I think that resonated very well, and I think that should be reflected also in the blueprint and in our implementation. Now, what do we start? I think that what is important, and that is the civic society. That's where we should start. That's where I think we don't need to apply that strongly the conditionality. I mean, and it is not just about visa liberalization that as key as it is. And by the way, Mr. Andrey also said that, bringing conditions on visa liberalization will be somewhat, breaking into open doors because, Putin will be happy with our conditions. But what I think came out from also this panel is that there is much more to be done in interaction with the civic society than in fact we have also in our blueprint, whether it concerns students, cyber, for example, that you have kindly referred to, and there are other issues, and I think that we can take initiatives in this respect. Trust, confidence building in security terms, and that is absolutely key for our safety, security, and the Russian one. But trust is, and I think it has also been mentioned, trust is a sort of a line that goes through all that we have debated today. Gradually, we need to build up that trust. I'm coming to an end with 2 or 3 final remarks. One is on free trade. I must admit that I'm, as much as I support, as we all in ALDE, our blueprint, I'm much more skeptical on the economic side. It's going to be difficult. I think that while we can have free trade somewhere on the horizon, but let's see, let's say, particular sectorial other issues that we can address, and that maybe we won't be really running into the obstacles of certain, let's say, obstructions, whatever one would call it. Sanctions, sanctions. I'm sorry, but I differ from some of the colleagues, and I also differ with Mr. Navalny. I do see the difference between the two, let's say, sanctions, the two basic sanction pillars. But any move from our side, it will be justified if there is a move on the Russian side. I cannot subscribe to sending that message that will ease up on any of the sanctions and eventually also come with other initiatives and so on, at a time when there is no move. And this brings me to the final 2 remarks. One is, and you have said, выборы у нас не существуют. That is basically key. That is what we should understand, and that is also what we should be able to say after the presidential elections, that there is highly a reason to provide, full recognition. I think this is key. And final remark, Mr. Andrey has said, change your policy. And I think that if you would listen carefully to some of my remarks, comments, I think that you would find certain emphasis on certain aspects which I think need a reflection and change in our policy. So once again, thank you for you Russian colleagues. I think that many of us are neither ready to sell out on our values, but also what is going on in Russia is dear to us. We'll be happy to continue working with you, including in the debates that you have asked for in Russia, if not considered persona non grata in your country, which some of us might have a difficulty with. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. Then a great thank you. Огромное спасибо нашим русским друзьям. There was a saying, and that goes back to the tango phrase. There was a saying in the Hill Street Blues series, do it to them before they do it to you, and that goes for tango also. Thank you.